Thinking about going to perhaps the weekly Shrug. Yeah, that's just daily's pretty hard to do while you work full time. Today I plan on going over some of the more Shrug-worthy stories from the last couple of weeks. Some very interesting, funny stories. CBS canned Stephen Colbert. He thinks Trump did it. I got the details. And what's this about the Dems having a meltdown over the Texas redistricting? Well, let's look a little deeper into all that as well. But also, I have an update on a previous story. Democrats posting something very critical of Biden and Sydney Sweeney's jeans.
Another week. Another shrug.
There's a couple of little fun things. This is what happens when your fans become your pit crew.
Amen.
And that's pretty awesome. Now, if you haven't heard about the Coldplay cheating couple, then you've been hiding under a rock because they've been everywhere. And I wanted to do a story on it. My life got really busy and I wasn't able to do it. But I did come up with a couple of little memes here that I thought was hilarious that I wanted to share with you. And oops, here we have Donald and Hillary. And not to be outdone, Bill and Monica. Well, let's get into Stephen Colbert's story and the cancellation of The Late Show. This is a story from the New York Post. CBS canned The Late Show over tens of millions in financial losses annually, not Stephen Colbert's politics. And they have the sources for it. So the CBS brass say they pulled the plug on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert because of its punishing losses. They claim between $40 and $50 million per year. They claim politics had nothing to do with it. The 61-year-old host got canned just days after he took a dig at the network for its $16 million settlement with Donald Trump over their controversial 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. So this occurred right about the same time as their parent company, Paramount, was looking for regulatory approval from the Trump administration for an $8 billion sale to an independent studio called Skydance. Colbert says, "I'm offended. I don't know if anything will ever repair my trust in this company." Let's dig into the particulars on this, okay? According to John Lefevre on X, he has a 200-person staff, including 20 writers. They have a $100 million budget, a $15 million salary for Colbert alone. Their losses, $40 million per year. And their ratings have been, until recently, completely in the toilet. So one of the things I thought was interesting is that about the same time Stephen Colbert was canceled, Jimmy Fallon was renewed. So I wanted to look into how they compared with each other. And this is a graph that shows the average number of nightly viewers over about the last 10 years. I did not include 2025. And the big reason for that is because Colbert has been enjoying, since his cancellation, a real bump in viewership that, again, I believe is probably false and it will probably fall off as all of that goes away. But in this graph, you can see that both of the late night hosts have been having pretty precipitous drops in their viewership over the past 10 years. And you can see that Fallon has really trended downward heavily, whereas Colbert was able to hold on to some of his audience. But both of them are really dipping pretty low. So why did Fallon get renewed when Colbert got canceled. So let's go into the next graph I have. Now, this is an estimated profit and loss based on some very conservative numbers, because basically the companies don't really provide you with a lot of information about ad revenues, etc. What you'll see is that Fallon's profit and loss has been kind of leveling out over the last few years, whereas Colbert has continued to plummet. And some of that is because of cost-cutting measures on the part of Fallon's show. They've switched to 4 nights per week, and Colbert is still at 5. So that makes a big difference when you're looking at how profitable a show is. And it appears that they're both losing money. Fallon is losing slightly less money than that. Fallon is also enjoying a lot of reposting revenue from online sites, as the things that he does and the skits that he does generate views outside of network television. Whereas Stephen Colbert has the dancing syringes. None of this really is shrug worthy. It's nerdy stuff. Let me tell you, what I thought was really shrug worthy was this particular clip.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
Ha ha ha, very, very funny. Except his clever little bit of writing was a ripped off joke based on this.
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself. But go yourself. Is that clear?
Now, I had a little shrug-worthy update to a previous story in which a young man was throwing rocks at ICE vehicles. Well, update from Victoria Byrne on X. The suspect accused of throwing rocks at federal vehicles has been captured. He was found hiding out in Mexico, the very same country that he was trying to avoid being deported to. Now there's a shrug. And speaking of shrugs, the Democrats recently put out an X post. I don't know who did it. Hopefully they got fired, but they wanted to damn Trump over his record high prices. So they posted this chart. U.S. grocery prices reached record highs in 2025. Prices are higher today than they were on July 2024 in all major categories listed below. Well, yeah, I'm looking at that. And I got to say, those prices went up well into the Biden administration. Wouldn't you say? There's only a tiny little uptick in Trump's numbers. Just saying. So what's all this about Democrats having an issue with Texas redistricting? Well, let's take a look at it. First off, here's good old Gavin Newsom and his take on the situation.
Hey, President Trump, it's time to stand down. It's time to make another phone call to Greg Abbott. This time, instead of calling him and telling him you're quote unquote entitled to 5 congressional seats, it's time to tell him to stand down. It's time to recognize that democracy is at risk. It's time to, dare I say, do the right thing. Actually see how that feels for you, doing the right thing. If you don't, California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas. California will continue to punch above its weight. We believe in democracy. We believe in the enduring values of our founding fathers. 249 years. We're not going to sit back passively. We're not going to sit back and watch you light democracy on fire. We will fight fire with fire.
Now, personally, I don't think we should ever take threats from any politician. The minute politicians start throwing around threats is the minute we need to get them out of office, because they think they're more important than the populace. But here's another Democrat politician throwing a little stink.
We just had a meeting to listen to them, to hear from them about what it is that is happening in Texas, how wrong it is, what is happening to their constituents and to voters in Texas, and to also talk about what this means for voters around the country, including here in Massachusetts.
So yeah, they sound righteously pissed over what Texas is doing, but are they perhaps maybe a little hypocritical? Because let's look at the real data here. So here's a post from Matt Whitlock on X regarding gerrymandering. In California, you know, the state where Gavin Newsom is so self-righteously upset at the fact that Texas is redistricting, 40% of Californians are Republican. 40%. That's not a small amount of people. 40% of the most populous state in the union is not a small amount of people. We only have 9 out of 52 seats. So how is that? That's 17% of the available seats go to Republicans, whereas there's 40% of us. How is that representative? Oh, and the self-righteous Massachusetts governor who wants to tell us all about fairness. Well, 35% of her voters are Republicans. 0 of their seats, 0 of their 9 seats go to Republicans. Connecticut, 38% Republican, 0 out of 5 seats. New York, 42% of the statewide vote goes to Republicans, and yet only 7 of the 26 seats are occupied by Republicans. New Jersey, 43% Republicans, 3 out of the 12 seats go to Republicans. Maryland, 38% of the statewide vote Republican, only 1 seat out of 8. New Mexico, 44% of the statewide vote is Republican. 0 out of the 3 seats go to Republicans. Hawaii, 30% Republican. 0 out of their 2 seats. Oregon, 42% of the statewide vote is Republican. 1 of the 6 seats go to Republicans. Washington State, 38% Republicans, 2 out of the 10 seats. Rhode Island has 38% Republicans, 0 out of their 2 seats. So when it comes to gerrymandering, the Democrats are no slouches in that department. So whatever your opinion on gerrymandering is, and personally, I don't like gerrymandering. I would like to see it go away completely. And in fact, in California, we voted to take the apportionment away from the politicians and give it to independent councils just to avoid further gerrymandering of our state. And that's one of the things that Gavin Newsom wants to take away from us with this upcoming vote in November. So why all of this attention all of a sudden on redistricting? Why does it matter? And why don't we just wait until 2030 and do it when we normally do it? Well, that's because there was significant numbers of errors done on the last census that was done in 2020. In fact, so many errors that it affected the apportionment status of the various states. The errors in census counting was so bad that a number of census employees were fired over it. So here is, according to the Census Bureau itself, 37 states or state equivalents did not have an estimated statistically significant undercount or overcount. However, 14 states are estimated to have had an undercount or an overcount, a net coverage error statistically different from 0, meaning that they were either undercounted or overcounted. Undercounted states, these are states in which they did not count enough people, and as a result, they may or may not have lost seats. Arkansas, undercounted by 5%. Florida, undercounted by 3.5%. Illinois, undercounted by 2%. Mississippi, undercounted by 4%. Tennessee, undercounted by nearly 5%. And Texas, undercounted by 2%. The overcounts would result in a state either holding seats they should not hold or getting new seats added to them that they should not have. So overcounts. Delaware was overcounted by 5.5%. Hawaii overcounted by nearly 7%. Massachusetts overcounted by 2.25%. Minnesota overcounted by nearly 4%. New York overcounted by nearly 3.5%. Ohio overcounted by 1.5%. Rhode Island overcounted by 5%, and Utah overcounted by a little over 2.5%. What does that mean? When you break down those numbers, because you can't just look at the percentages, you have to look at how those percentages affected the population. Florida did not receive 2 additional congressional seats that it should have gotten based on a more accurate count. Texas missed out on 1 additional congressional seat. Minnesota and Rhode Island each retained a congressional seat that they should have lost had the count been more accurate. Colorado gained a seat to which it was not entitled to based upon a more accurate account. This affects those states' voices in the Congress, and this also affects presidential elections. Those congressional seats determine the electoral college votes that the states have. So this is actually a pretty big deal. All of this put together is essentially why this story from me earns 5 big shrugs. And here's a story that I don't necessarily think is very shrug-worthy. However, I think it needs to be applauded. In a first, Arab League countries condemn the October 7th attack and called on Hamas to disarm. And for that, kudos, guys. You know, it's not often that you see Arab countries criticize each other. And this is definitely showing a sea change in the thinking of that part of the world. And hopefully will lead to peace. And a story that deserves all 5 of its shrugs. Sydney Sweeney's ad shows an unbridled cultural shift toward whiteness. Somehow they made a commercial into some sort of racial bias kind of thing. And I just think it's pretty ridiculous. This was on the Daily Caller. It says, "Good Morning America has the most ridiculous response to Sydney Sweeney's new ad campaign. American Eagle recently launched their Sydney Sweeney Has Great Genes campaign that featured the popular actress clad in denim, striking risque poses. Their stock is now soaring. They are selling out of jeans like nobody's business. And unsurprisingly, MSNBC ran an op-ed arguing that the ads show an unbridled cultural shift towards whiteness. ABC News jumps into the fray as well, pushing the same unhinged Nazi narrative that one expects to find in the recesses of TikTok or, of course, the crazies at MSNBC. Now, they were really looking at the play on words, jeans versus jeans. And I think that that's pretty funny. And the fact that this is making such a big deal is hilarious. And it's really the Barbara Streisand effect. In other words, if you put enough attention on something, people are going to go and look at that thing. And this is not a bad ad campaign. This is actually a pretty humorous ad campaign. And from all indicators, a very effective ad campaign. And to Sydney Sweeney's credit and American Eagle's credit, they have not backed down. And instead, they have decided to push this envelope a little further. Whether you agree with that or not, that's progress. That's taking us away from this rampant ride toward racism, in basically trying to erase whiteness. And I think that's a good thing for America as a whole. Well, that should do it for now. But please remember, save your outrage for TikTok, but definitely save your cash for denim.